This is a guy named Scott Lobaido who took to the streets in protest of a New York City crackdown on coal and wood-fired oven pizzerias. So there's about 100 pizzerias in New York City that they're giving a hard time for the environmental impacts of their coal ovens and their wood-fired ovens. Now, as a New York City tour guide, I could tell you that coal ovens have actually been outlawed in New York City for quite some time. I forget when the exact year was that they implemented that law, but the old coal oven pizzerias, you know, the sort of the real old world Neapolitan style pizzerias that were open before that ban went into effect were sort of grandfathered in. Lombardi's is the sort of most famous example of that. That's the oldest continually running pizzeria in the country, opened in 1905.
Well, it was the first.
Yeah.
It was literally the first dedicated pizzeria in the country.
But, you know, a lot of Italians and a lot of New Yorkers not too happy with this crackdown on old world pizza, and Scott Lobaido is no exception. He calls himself an artist, activist, sort of an influencer, if you will, on social media, and he raised his profile quite a bit with this latest stunt outside of City Hall. Let's take a look. Let's go to Scott Lobaido.
The woke-ass punks who run New York City are afraid of pizza? The world used to respect New Yorkers as tough, thick-skinned, and gritty. Now we have become pussified. It's a damn shame. You heard of the Boston Tea Party? Well, this is the New York, this is the New York Pizza Party. Give us pizza or give us death.
All right, now here we go.
Give us pizza.
My God.
Or give us death. Give us pizza. Or give us death.
This is like January 6th. How many years in
It's
prison?
a one-man.
It's a
one-man January 6th.
What is this? 5-6 years in jail? He'll get for this? Oh, he's got more pizzas.
He's got more pizza.
Wasn't just doing
he's not,
one.
No, he brought up four. He's got 4 pies there.
That's what this city keeps doing. Can't have a small business. Can't have pizza.
Oh, my God.
New York City is nothing without pizza.
Now, look, he is eventually approached by the authorities.
I was wondering, man, because this is City Hall. That's City Hall.
No, there's a lot of... Look, he sees him. He just saw.
Boston Tea Party.
You could just see.
New York Pizza Party.
Excuse me, sir. The hell are you doing?
Gotta do my thing, man.
I gotta do my thing, man. I said, you hear him saying that to the cop? I gotta do my thing, man. When the cop comes up.
They let him do the 4th pie?
This is the
No,
New York
I
Pizza
just rewinded it because I want to hear this. Listen.
Gotta do my thing, man.
Gotta do my thing, man. Hey, I'm on here. The camera. You see the camera running? I'm on here. Gotta do my thing here. Wow.
Oh man. Yeah, that is your classic old school New Yorker. That guy is from Queens or Brooklyn, most likely. Possibly Staten Island. Definitely not Manhattan.
The only thing I will say is, you know, if he were really, you know, in order to give him that, you know, 10 out of 10 New York style points, he wouldn't have been reading off the script. He would have had it in his head.
He would have had it. Yeah.
Yeah. A slight deduction for reading it.
Maybe 1 point out of 10 though, because that's easily a 9.
Oh,
if
yeah,
that guy doesn't get a 9, who does?
That guy doesn't get a, yeah, no, exactly. Can't be too harsh. Can't be too harsh a grader. Absolutely not.
So Kit, shut the fuck up about Chicago pizza, right? Because you ain't gonna get nobody in Chicago who's gonna do that over
you couldn't
city
do that with a
ordinances
Chicago
about
pizza. You throw your shoulder out. You throw your arm out.
That's true.
It would too hard.
Fall
too
on
heavy.
You.
Yeah, fall back on you. Third-degree burns from that shit. It would just fall right back on your face. Exactly.
In terms of the actual theoretical subject of the protest, he had a lot more in his mind than a pizza. But I mean, this is what's so stupid. That this is part of what drives people crazy about these environmental the environmental posturing from elites. It's not that from our perspective there's nothing legitimate about climate change, but you're going to break balls of what they admit is no more than 100 pizzerias that use these ovens. And meanwhile, these guys are flying to Davos to lecture everybody about the environment. Why don't you cut back on the driving that the city government does?
Right. Exactly.
That's gonna. What is 100 pizzerias doing to the environment? Honestly, like this makes.
Of course.
This is where I can see where libertarians are coming from, because there is this compulsion with government to expand its territory and to expand its regulations and to expand its laws. There is definitely this self-perpetuating instinct among government officials. Like, otherwise, if you're not writing laws to break people's balls, what are you doing there? Like, what happens if things are kind of running okay, right? They don't stop, right? They don't stop writing laws. So are all these laws necessary that they write?
No. Listen, it's fucking insane to crack down on 100 pizzerias, because you're right. What is the environmental impact of 100 pizzerias in New York City? It's nothing. It's just a virtue signal.
Why don't you refuse to allow private jets to land?
Right. Exactly. Or limit the fucking, helicopter tours around the city or whatever. Convert, half the police cars to hybrids, whatever. Right. You're gonna make an issue out of 100 pizzerias. It will do little to nothing, actually, like effectively zero, to combat environmental decay. But it becomes an existential issue for these pizzerias, who now all of a sudden, what do they do, right? Especially these institutions like Grimaldi's, Lombardi's, which that's their thing, is the coal oven. That was my whole spiel. When I would give a pizza tour, when I give a food tour, we go to Lombardi's, I had a whole, now I don't remember. It's been almost 10 years since I've given one of these fucking things. But that was my whole thing about the coal oven, and it goes back to Naples. It's the whole charm of the place, right? And so what? You're going to force them to alter their brand in such a way with no real environmental payoff. The other thing that's really interesting about this is that I remember it was either late 2021 or early 2022, Governor of New York, Kathy Hochul, went on this big push to get people back in the office, right? Because the lockdowns had been lifted, but a lot of companies had switched to a lot of work from home because it was cheaper. They saved on rent and real estate and all this. And she made this big deal. No, we need everybody to come back, right? Now, obviously, I'm not saying we lock down again, and keep people out of the office. But what about incentivizing like 1 or 2 days a week of work from home? That had an incredible effect on the environment. One thing that we learned was that lockdown period, during the first 6 weeks of the pandemic lockdowns, you saw miraculous environmental recovery, which proves you don't need technocratic, liberal meddling to let the environment heal. The environment will heal if you leave it the fuck alone and let it heal, right? You saw waterways in Venice. Not only did the water become blue again, but you actually saw wildlife return to the area, vegetation start to grow. The ozone layer actually started to heal when everybody was forced to stay home. Now, obviously, we don't force people to stay home, but the environmental impact of having people take it easy. So why is Kathy Hochul hustling to get people back to work? Answer: real estate lobby, right? Real estate value is going down. But now you're going to bust the balls of these pizzerias. Not only would the environment benefit from a 4-day commuter week, right? It could still be a 5-day work week. Incentivize, don't mandate it, obviously, but incentivize. Come up with a tax thing or whatever. Make it worth their while. So we know that works. That's something you could actually do that would not only help the environment, but I would argue it would increase quality of life to a certain extent. Traffic would be less, right? Air quality would be better. It would require some sort of mutual sacrifice because, restaurants wouldn't make quite as much, right? They would take in less in tolls and things like that. But if you want to talk about, okay, we're going to encourage a sort of mutual sort of collective sacrifice for the sake of the environment, why not do that? Well, why not do that? Because the real estate lobby buys a lot more political power than Lombardi's Pizza. That's why. Well,
no, I was not planning on sharing this tonight, but I happen to have this open. You want to know why they want people back in the office?
Why is that?
These are photos of the New York subway in the 70s. That's why. They can't afford the subway without these people in the city. I think subway revenues are still down 40%. This is what New York looked like when I was a child.
Yeah, that's the 70s and 80s era subway cars, yeah.
Yeah. New York is not going to be able to afford the subway system. They were already out of money on the subway, but they got all this federal money after COVID. If these people don't come back to the office, we're going back to the old days. Although I don't know if we have graffiti artists in New York who are going to be quite as interesting and creative as those were.
Please clap.